get to the bottom of what's truly healthy in this crazy, complex world, so you can take back what is rightfully yours. Welcome to the Health Sovereign Podcast. This is your host, Logan Christopher.
Got some great stuff for you today on the medical monopoly track. We're talking about interlocking directorates. Until recently, I had never heard this term, and I'm guessing many people listening have not heard it either, but I feel it is a very crucial term to understand. It's like revolving door, that is someone that goes between public and private business, working for, say, the FDA, then head of Monsanto, as we saw happen before. That's an important term. Captured agency is another one, where these regulatory agencies, such as the FDA, that are regulating drugs, are captured by some degree, influenced by the industry they're supposed to regulate through the revolving door and a bunch of other steps. So here, an interlocking directorate. Well, we'll get into what that is. Very important term. And of course, after these two issues where we discuss interlocking directorates in between pharma and mass media, and then pharma and health companies with Google specifically. So let's dive in. Medical Monopoly Musings number 50, Interlocking Directorates, Media and Pharma. An interlocking directorate is when directors from one company also sit on the boards of other companies. As most companies are public, this means that such officers have a fiduciary responsibility to do what is in the best interest of each company. If one such company is a media company, this translates into being a conflict of interest. A 2009 report from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting found the following. Of the 9 major media corporations, such as Disney, Time Warner, New York Times, and others, 6 had directors that were also part of pharmaceutical boards. In addition, 5 out of the 9 shared directors with insurance companies. That was 2009. There are now just 5 major media companies. While it'll take more digging to vet out current data, do you think this problem has gotten better or worse since then? As we see consolidation of the media companies themselves, we'll see further examples of consolidation of power among the interlocking directorates. Let me put it in perspective for you. These board members wake up, they go to a meeting at Merck or Pfizer, and then they have their driver take them over to a meeting with NBC to decide what kind of programming that network is going to air. For those board members who aren't pulling double duty with a media conglomerate and a big drug company, they still understand that they can't be honest and objective about Big Pharma because Big Pharma pays their bills, says lawyer Mike Papantino. Drug companies spend about $5 billion a year on advertising with these corporate media outlets. So when Pfizer or Merck or Eli Lilly or any of the drug companies kill or cripple Americans with defective drugs, do you really think these board members are going to allow their story to be told on the air? It can take anywhere from 3 days to a full week before the media reports on a drug or medical device recall, if they report it at all. In the case of Invokana, it took 32 days before television outlets reported a single story involving an FDA warning about the potential problems with the product. From the FAIR website, undated, you can see examples of this. CBS/Viacom shares directorate with Pfizer and Cardinal Health, large distributor of pharmaceuticals and medical products. Remember in the previous post where CBS journalist Cheryl Atkinson ran into problems from executives over her critical pharma coverage. New York Times Company shares directorate with Bristol Myers Squibb and Johnson & Johnson. On and on it goes. Does this cause problems? Back in 2009, some people looked at this in relation to healthcare reform. Kate Murphy from FAIR wrote, in all, though healthcare reform has been mentioned thousands of times in the output of these media corporations' major outlets, single payer was mentioned in only 164 articles or news segments from January 1st through June 30th, 2009. Over 70% of these mentions did not include the voice of a single payer advocate. So yeah, it's absolutely affecting journalistic coverage. Even if only some stories get squashed or altered, this leads to compounding problems over time. And of course, it's not just the media. Martin J. Murray published a paper titled The Pharmaceutical Industry, A Story in Corporate Power, in which he stated, the thesis of this paper is that small-scale drug manufacturing firms have been gradually replaced by large-scale multinational conglomerates. Production and sales are no longer dependent on pharmaceutical products. In the typical case, large-scale pharmaceutical producing firms have been increasingly linked to financial institutions through interlocking directorates. This was written in 1974. Think there are some interlocking directorates between Big Pharma and Big Tech these days? In the future, we'll go even deeper. Medical Monopoly Musings number 51, Interlocking Directorate of Alphabet, Google. Last post covered how interlocking directorates can be problematic between media companies and other companies, which the news should be digging into. These conflicts of interest may stop or hinder balanced coverage from happening, such as about pharmaceutical drugs. While we will be returning to traditional media later on, it's important to look at Big Tech's role in all this too. Are any of the board of directors from Alphabet, Google's parent company, also on boards of Big Pharma? Yes. One of Alphabet's most recent additions is Robin L. Washington, former CFO of Gilead Sciences for 10 years. While she is now on Alphabet's board, she is still on the board of Gilead Connecticut, Gilead Sciences International, Gilead Sciences Europe, Kite Pharma UK Limited, and others. There's the names you may know, Page, Brin, Pichai. Then there are names you've probably never heard of. Robin is the only one with current direct pharma ties, but there are various high-tech biology companies involved. Here are some of the other Alphabet board members. Frances Hamilton Arnold is on the board of Illumina Inc., which is a bioinformation company, and Donna and Benjamin M. Rosen Bioengineering Center. John Leroy Hennessy is on the board of Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, which is a research partnership for diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines. Louis John Doerr is on Cardinal Analytics Incorporated, now called Prilize Health, for machine learning in healthcare, and Life Technologies Clinical Services Lab Incorporated, which develops molecular assays for clinical and pharma customers. Alan R. Mulally is on the Mayo Foundation and Mayo Clinic boards. Ram Kivatarek Shiraram is at Stanford Healthcare. Roger Walton Ferguson is at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. See posts number 30 and 31 for big and hidden conflicts of interest going on there, and Rally Health Incorporated, a health data company. And it's not always an interlocking directorate. For example, Mary Ellen Coe is not on Alphabet's board, but she is president of Global Customer Solutions for Google. Meanwhile, she is on the Merck board of directors. See post number 37 to learn how Merck is the second biggest serial criminal in Big Pharma, paying almost $9 billion in fines thus far. Is this cause for alarm? You would expect powerful people to be involved with many things, right? And lots of people are justifiably interested in health. By itself, interlocking directorates are only potential conflicts, so we must look beyond them for actions and patterns that occur. The name Gilead may be familiar to you. They're the ones behind remdesivir, the expensive antiviral drug hot in the news today, and one we saw significant conflicts of interest behind its approval in issue number 44, while seeing the concerted push against cheaper hydroxychloroquine in number 45. Is Google manipulating search results in order to push one thing and denigrate the other? Have we seen online censorship of information, such as on YouTube especially, for doctors speaking out about how hydroxychloroquine works? You be the judge. Next time, more on Alphabet's big steps into the healthcare space and increased censorship. So I want to be clear on something here. I am not accusing any of these people of being evil or doing wrong. This is not enough information to do so. I am saying it is worthy of digging deeper, of looking into more. RICO, Racketeer and Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. This is how the mafia was taken down, because the guys at the top do not commit any crimes. They have other people that do it, and it is only by looking at the web of connections of such individuals that we can see how organized crime operates. And if we see patterns, which we have explained in the 50 or so episodes we've had here, that Big Pharma operates as organized crime, and that's the title of Peter Gosha's, one of the best scientists out there, the guy that helped start the Cochrane Institute, which looked at real science, which eventually got corrupted by this criminal organization. He talked about the deadly medicine and organized crime was the title of his book. So this is a theory, I guess, a hypothesis that we need to investigate. And if we look at clear examples, let's take remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine. We see increased censorship. We see specific steps taken and put out in mass media and online, social media, censorship around these topics and pushing of certain agendas. So we can see that certain things are happening. We need to look and understand why. Again, not necessarily everyone on this board of directors is an evil person or anything. Not saying that. I'm saying it is worthy of more diving into. And I just quickly looked at Twitter and Facebook's board of directors. Not a lot of digging here, just looking at it, interesting stuff. Twitter, we find someone that is on Verily Life Sciences. In the next medical monopoly musing issue, we talk about how Verily is one of Alphabet's health companies. And that's Egon Durbin that is on there. I also see here Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, and I apologize if I'm butchering names here, but this person is on the Rockefeller Foundation, the Gavi Alliance, a whole bunch of other stuff. That's certainly interesting. And so this is Twitter's board. And there's a whole bunch of names I have not looked into before, so there may be much more. Facebook, what do we see? Sheryl Sandberg's on the Google Foundation, so even though there's this public idea that Facebook and Google are fighting each other in some way, there's, for advertising revenue and whatnot, there is, but if you're on the Google Foundation, that's quite interesting. Doesn't seem to be as much here, but once again, this is just a light perusal, and names that I know, many of these I do not. So Nancy Killefer on Facebook's board is also part of Cardinal Health. Cardinal Health was on the board of that, as well as CBS, at least years ago. So interesting cross connection between big tech and mass media. Once again, not accusing these people of something, but something worth looking at. When we see these patterns of corruption, we see patterns of censorship, we need to look behind it. And that's why I feel the Interlocking Directorate is an important piece of the puzzle. And speaking of pieces of the puzzle, what I'm really trying to do here, and I've been talking about this, is try to understand how it could possibly come to pass. And whether this is like some conspiracy of top people that are pushing it down, or it's really just a systemic thing, and capitalism and privatized gain, public losses, that sort of thing that systemically is pushing towards these agendas. We have to understand how that happens either way. And conspiracies occur, so these may be big global conspiracies or more smaller ones. Either way, this is a component of how that happens. And it's one piece of the puzzle, one very small piece. So looking at the interlocking board of directors, we saw with mass media, it's pushback from executives who get pushback from the board of directors in order to have specific news coverage. An analogy that came to mind was that of a chessboard. And I'm still working on fleshing this out further. But if we think of Big Pharma as organized crime, and we think of the chess pieces, who are those chess pieces? Now, there's only a few different things, and it's vastly more complex in reality, but I've been thinking about the doctors are really just kind of the pawns. They receive more of the propaganda, the public relations, this philosophy of Western health pushed on them than anyone else. The doctors, the nurses, the healthcare providers, mostly the pawns. We take a step back. What are the rooks? These are the institutions, the hospitals, the academics, the colleges, that sort of thing. And we're going to see some very interesting stuff on that coming up soon. Issue coming up where we see just how nonprofits are part of this interlocking directorate or part of the directorates. But nonprofit institutions as well, foundations even. So these big institutions that hold a lot of authority, I see those as the rooks. The knights, that's probably the PR firms, the public relations people, the journalists that are in their pockets that are able to wage this information warfare out there. Then who are the bishops? Well, religion's not really tied into this. Let's look at politics. The lobbyists, the politicians that are in their pockets, we could put the regulatory agencies either as the rooks, maybe the bishops, seeing that revolving door happen. I'd say the queen, the one with all the moves. So when you think of this as psychological warfare, in a sense, the queen is the mass media and the big tech now. And the king, of course, would be the CEOs, the leadership of Big Pharma, those that are making the profit. And understand that there may be revolving doors between all these different pieces. So this is my first iteration of it. I would love any feedback on it. If you like this idea, I think I'm going to flesh it out. Helps to understand how this is all done. Once again, Interlocking Directorate, and I need a term for, like we saw with Mary Ellen Coe. She was not on multiple boards, but she is head of a huge Google department and sitting on Merck's board at the same time. Again, not accusing her of anything, but an important piece to understand that this is when you get to powerful positions, and everyone's heard the quote, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I'm saying there's a good chance of corruption in here. Not necessarily everyone, but if you have just 10% corruption, that leads to systemic effects. People can consolidate more power, drive certain agendas forward, and that's what we need to look out for. If you enjoyed this, share the episode around, leave a review on iTunes, whatever you want to do. We need to get this information out there for people to understand. The big reason that keeps people trapped in this old paradigm of health is because it is hugely powerful, and they cannot understand how these things could possibly occur in our world. But we have proof. We know they're occurring. We have to understand how. That's what we're going for.